Welcome to Business Talk, our weekly University of Rio Grande OSU South Centers podcast show. We are here at the University of Rio Grande TV studio. Not only are we doing live internet radio through Blog Talk Radio, we are also live on Jackson Educational Access Channel and Channel 17 University of Rio Grande TV channel. Our podcasts are archived and placed on YouTube for your viewing and listening again. Our mission is simple: to promote the University of Rio Grande and its diverse educational programs, promote the Ohio State University South Centers and its many business technology programs, and finally promote Southern Ohio, a great place to live, learn, and enjoy life to its fullest. I am Jason Winters, Director of the Center for Small Business Entrepreneurship, and with me is my co-host Mike Thompson, Instructional Design and Media Services Director. Both of us are with the University of Rio Grande. Also, we have Patrick Dengel, Business Development Specialist, and Kimberly Roush, Program Assistant, both with Ohio State University South Centers. And this week, joining us on Blog Talk Radio is Christie Welch. Christie is also with Ohio State University, and she will be talking about aquaculture with us today. Pat, why don't you share with us our guest and some of the things that we're going to talk about today?
Again, it's a pleasure having Christie on the program. We're going to be talking about something near and dear to our heart, but it's a little bit fishy. I wanted to get that in.
Just like my lunch.
Christie is going to talk a little bit. She's a business development specialist, and her hands are involved in all different kinds of ways of helping farming. And one of the areas is aquaculture. Her true love is farmers market. But in a way, aquaculture is one of those areas that farming communities are getting involved with more and more. We have over 200 different aquaculture-based farms throughout Ohio. And that is a major increase since Ohio State University South Centers got involved in some of the research programs. Christie's going to talk a little bit about the aquaculture innovation, productivity, profitability, more importantly about the business planning templates and some of the resources that are available at our center. Christie, welcome, and I'm glad that you're able to come here today and share a lot of different information about aquaculture.
Well, Patrick, thank you. Jason, thank you. And Mike, thank you. It's good to be back here at the University of Rio Grande and to share information with your listeners and viewers. And we are going to talk about aquaculture today. And of course, as you know, that is fish farming in its most basic term. And I do want to make it clear that I'm not a production specialist, but I can help and provide assistance with developing a business plan for folks that are thinking about starting an aquaculture enterprise here in Ohio. And we have production specialists at the Ohio Center, South Centers, which is our aquaculture research program, what we call OCARD. And if you have production questions, we have many resources available to help you evaluate what type of species you might want to look at growing, what it takes to grow different species, and explore some of the options that you have available to you.
What kind of research have they done there?
The research that's being done is very exciting. Dr. Hangping Wang, who is the researcher with the aquaculture program, has done some genetic mapping of yellow perch, which is the target species for here in Ohio, and that's some research that's never been done before. So that's pretty exciting research that's currently happening at the South Centers with the aquaculture program. Of course, the goal of that is to help, some of that research was done many years ago in other livestock industries like the cattle industry and the hog industry, and so that we can pick and select those bloodlines that provide the best growing fish, the ones that are going to grow most rapidly and most efficiently, and so that you have a better opportunity for success. So that's some pretty exciting research they're doing.
Is this a year-round business, or do they go dormant during the?
Well, it depends on your species selection on whether this would be a year-round business. The other species that they have researched at the South Centers are freshwater prawns, or freshwater shrimp as they're also known. And with that particular species, it is a seasonal operation. You would stock your pond in the early spring May, June, around that time, grow those out through the fall, and then you harvest in the fall. And so you don't have anything in your pond over the winter because they can't survive the cold temperatures. But if you're looking at some of the fish species like yellow perch, tilapia, some of the other things, those can be carried over the winter here in Ohio.
Now, you've also done research on bluegill, is that correct, at the center?
There has been some research done on bluegill as well. One of the things that they're looking at there is to figure out how, because the male of the species grows more efficiently, is there things that they can do that manipulate the percentage of male versus female fish that you get for your production? So that's some other research they're doing as well.
Do people eat bluegill?
Sure. Bluegill's a wonderful fish. I can remember growing up, my grandmother loved to fish, and of course it was wild caught.
Are you serious?
I always thought they were too small to mess with.
Oh my heavens, that's one of the best eating fish you can eat.
I'm not a fisherman at all. So I probably went fishing when I was 4, and that was it.
Well, Mike, you need to come out to the farm.
It's a little boring for me.
And you can walk down, and within an hour you can catch all the bluegill and all the crappie and a few bass. But I don't want you eating my bass. My bass are fun to catch.
Yeah, I just don't. After I caught it, I wouldn't know what to do with it. Cleaning and I don't know.
You need
well,
to come
and of
out.
course,
We'll take care of you.
if you're thinking about getting into this as a business, you're going to have to explore all those options. What species is going to be most profitable for the particular market you're going after? And is that bluegill? Is it yellow perch? Is it freshwater ponds? There's some other opportunities for other species as well. And so we can help you kind of sift through all those different things and see which one might be the best fit for you.
And that's really your area of expertise. You're looking at the business planning side, how to take your business and make money with it.
Exactly, and we can help you develop that business plan. Look at the resources that you currently have available. Do you have land available where you could possibly build a pond? Or do you have an old barn on your property that could be converted to hold tanks and have a recirculating system that would be housed indoor? Or is it a combination of those things? Do you have sufficient amounts of water to be able to grow freshwater fish or fish in general? And the other thing that we'll look at too is, again, since it's a fairly emerging market here in Ohio, we can help you develop your business plan so that if you're seeking outside financing, you have a good plan put together. Because it's not a traditional type of business, there are some challenges with finding traditional sources of financing from banks and those kinds of organizations, just because there is risk involved. It's a live animal, and it's dependent on many different variables, and so you need to be sure that you have a really good plan in place to secure that outside financing if that's a need that you have.
But just raising fish in a body of water is not the end of the challenge. I think another challenge would be, what do you do after you've raised them?
Exactly.
Catching, storage, distribution.
That's a great question, Mike. And so that's the other thing that we recommend when you're developing your business plan. You're trying to identify your market and where that market is and how you're going to get that product to the market before you ever put the first fish in your pond. Because it is, of course, a perishable product. Once it's harvested, you have to do something with that. And depending on what target market you're going after, you need to figure all that out way before you put any fish in water.
Now, just eating fish is not the only place you can go with this, right?
That's correct. Some of the enterprises around the state right now are focusing on raising bait fish, and it's been fairly successful for those businesses. There's much of the bait fish that's currently being produced in Ohio is sold up to fishermen on Lake Erie who
So these are commercial fishermen, or are they sport fishermen?
They're both.
Okay.
They are both. And so there's and I apologize, I forget the name of the species, but there's a bait fish. It's a non-native species, but it won't compete with the native species in Lake Erie, and it won't reproduce in the lake, if I remember correctly. So it's turned out to be a really good option.
It cause problems like they have, what are those fish where they're driving down or boating down the thing and they're just jumping out of the water?
Snakeheads.
I don't know, you can just...
Well, in the past there has been problems with certain minnows that they were actually raising and using as bait fish, and they were using them in small ponds.
This was an Asian fish that's like full size, and go down the stream and these things will jump out into your boat.
Oh, I don't know
Have you
about
not
that.
seen those?
But I'm sure those weren't used as bait fish, but they could have been.
I'm not sure if those were put there for a different reason or if they just migrated from a place and up rivers and then became a problem.
And again, some of those non-native species can cause real havoc on the ecosystems of our freshwaters. And so that's the other thing that the aquaculture program is very focused on, is making sure that species that are being researched for production here in Ohio are not going to cause some of those problems down the road. For example, the freshwater prawns that are stocked in ponds here in Ohio can't survive the cold temperatures over the winter. So if one would happen to escape from your pond, it's not going to become an issue for the natural ecosystem here in Ohio.
I was just looking at some of the statistics that you were kind enough to bring over. In 2004, the total world production of fisheries was 140 million tons, of which aquaculture contributed to 45 million tons. And that is significant. Aquaculture, of course, is sometimes known as aqua farming. And oftentimes we think of fish as those little green patties, or golden orange patties.
I'm not sure what kind of fish you're eating, Pat, but I would stay away from the green ones.
Is it the little square ones?
It's the little square ones. I have yet to see them in the fishing book.
That's a great point, Patrick. Continually our wild species are being under continued pressure just for the amount of fish that's being harvested, and is it sustainable over the long term as more people consume fish because they realize the health benefits, as well as the world population continues to increase. And so this again is an opportunity to look at taking advantage, and the prediction is that market for farm-raised fish is going to increase. And of course, currently when we think of fish farming, a lot of times the first thing that comes to mind is catfish. And some of the southern states in the United States are very efficient and produce a lot of catfish, but the reality is most of the fish consumed in the United States that is farmed raised is imported from other countries at this time.
How about salmon? Is that one thing that might be viable here or not?
I do know that there are some folks that are trying to raise farm-raised salmon. Now, of course, that's a saltwater fish, and so those fisheries are in the oceans, the saltwater bodies. So I don't know much more about the salmon than that.
How difficult is it for a U.S. farmer to produce farm-raised catfish and compete with the international market? I know a lot of our tilapia is imported from overseas, and it's imported rather cheaply.
Yeah, that is correct. And so what we are looking at with the South Centers and the species that we're currently researching is what's going to provide the greatest opportunity for profitability for aquaculture enterprises here in Ohio. And so that's why they have targeted the bluegill and the freshwater perch. Again, the wild stocks of perch are under a lot of pressure to continue to supply the demand that's there. And so we're really looking at trying to explore those species where there's not already a lot of production globally, and provide some of those niche market opportunities for producers.
I was again looking at some of the information. Do you know the top 10 aquaculture producers in 2004? Who do you think the top group was?
I'm not sure.
Well, I wouldn't have an idea.
It's China. China in 2004 harvested over 30.5 million tons. And the next one was India. And they dropped from 30 million down to 2.5 million. United States, it appears to be ninth.
I'm kind of surprised we're that high. Isn't Vietnam one of the large producers?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they are the third top producer. So fish farming is extremely important, not only for our own consumption, but for the world's consumption. And that's why I think Ohio State University South Centers got involved in that research, because it is a world food.
Do you think it's any more ecologically better thing than raising beef? Where you've got to clear out land, and there's always been the methane problem.
Well, I think that you really
I have no methane problem.
I hope not, because the ventilation isn't very well.
I think, there's so much interest in local food right now, not only here in the United States and Ohio, but around the world. And so people are really realizing the benefits of supporting local production. And so I think any conscientious producer is going to take into consideration what impact it might have on the environment. And so that's certainly other things that we can help interested folks to walk through and find out what those impacts might be, and do what is necessary to help make sure that those are minimized. Conserving the water, conserving the soil, conserving air resources, all those kinds of things are very important when you explore an aquaculture enterprise. And that's, again, some of the things that we can help you with, to look at what's the risk of getting involved, what resources do you currently have available. Do you have enough land to construct some ponds? And of course that construction takes some money. So do you have the money and the knowledge on how to construct those ponds, and then turn that into a profitable business? So there are many, many questions that we can help provide some answers to.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what may be the difference if, the cost of getting into, say, like raising pigs or cattle or those type of farms versus getting into that kind of farming? Is it more expensive, the same, or what?
Well, I think that we really try to focus it on an individual basis, and so the costs are going to vary so much depending on what resources you currently have. Again,
and the scope and where you're starting.
And the scope and where you're starting, and what's the potential price that you can sell your product at. So we really take all those things into consideration. And most industries are cyclical, and so as the pork industry or the beef industry goes up and down, and I'm sure we've all heard on the news here lately that the beef supplies are the lowest they've been in 50 years, and everybody's predicting the price of a hamburger or a steak to increase. Again, with this being a relatively emerging market here in Ohio and in the United States, those are all things that we will take into consideration, and how profitably your enterprise might be.
Yeah. Mike, Tracy and I actually looked into getting into aquaculture a few years ago as a diversification to our already existing farm. It's really simple. We raise the goats, and we have plenty of market for the goats. We raise a few cattle, and we have a market for the cattle. What we were looking at is we had the land, and we had the water supply that was on the land to supply the necessary water for the ponds, the equipment to build the ponds. But what we were struggling with was the end product. What are we going to do with this fish once it's actually grown?
Are you harvesting and cleaning, or do you just harvest and take it to a place that cleans?
And that's what we're talking about, is finding your niche. What are you going to do with this? If you're going to raise a fresh prawn, who's going to eat it? If you're going to raise tilapia, who's going to eat it? Who's going to process it? Here in the U.S., there's processing plants. I think there's 3 meat processing plants here just in Gallia County that can take care of your hogs, your lambs, your cattle. But there's no fish processing plants around. So you really have to, that's a whole other side to your aquaculture. Who's going to process this final product for you? Or are you going to get into processing yourself, which is even more expense? Or are you going to specialize? You have your bait fish. Those you're not processing, but you have to have a market, someplace that you're taking those to that are going to resell them for you.
And the other thing is the ponds or lakes or something where people pay. Is it called a pay lake or something? And then do you charge an entry fee, or do you charge by the poundage that they take out?
That's a good question, and I would imagine it's a little bit of both around the state. I do want to address your issue here of processing. If you decide that you want to get into aquaculture and process the product yourself, you will have to have a HACCP plan, a hazardous critical control analysis plan that you have to develop and follow. And just like with the beef and hogs, there has to be an inspection process that your product would go through. So it does add expense if you're wanting to do the processing yourself. Now, I will say that as our population continues to diversify, not only here in Ohio, but throughout the United States, there are many cultures that don't mind purchasing a fish live and then processing it themselves when they get home. And again, we have the tools and the resources that we can help you work through the regulations on what you're planning to do. You do have to be registered and licensed through the Ohio Department of Agriculture to sell live fish here in Ohio. And then, of course, if you're going to do the processing, there's more regulations that you really have to consider. But again, we have the resources available that can help you sift through some of that information that can be very confusing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about those resources. I know that we have several researchers, we have several individuals. You're on the front lines with talking with many business owners, potential business owners. Share with us some of the resources that are available.
Okay, Patrick. One of the things, if you are again wanting more information about production of different species, would be to contact the OSU South Centers Aquaculture program, and they have their first Friday tour. So the first Friday, typically of every month, you can come to the South Centers and take a tour of the facilities. And we have ponds as well as recirculating tanks and different growing methods that you can see firsthand and decide which one might be a fit for you. We do ask that you call ahead and register, and we can give you the phone number here towards the end of the program. But that's a great opportunity to see firsthand what are some of the options and the research that's currently happening there. We also have developed a business plan template that is aquaculture specific. Again, it's a little bit different enterprise that we typically may not be used to when developing that business plan. So it provides those prompts that can help you answer some of those critical questions like, do I have enough water to even consider this? Right. What market am I going to explore, and how am I going to approach that? And then, of course, we have the ability with our business development counselors to sit down with you one-on-one and help you work through that business plan, as well as many, many resources on our website. If you go to southcenters.osu.edu/aqua, there are many fact sheets, there are many resources available to help you start learning about aquaculture. And one of the things that I typically encourage folks to do, just like you explored for yourself, Jason, is to explore your options and then start small. Mm-hmm. You know, you're trying something new, see how it works for you, see how you like it.
Mm-hmm. See if you can be successful in raising a fish.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, it is a live animal, so there are some risks associated, and being a live fish that lives in water, again, that can add another level of challenge. So many of the farms here in Ohio currently have added aquaculture to be a piece of their diversified farming operation. So there's many options that can be explored.
Yeah. Have they looked into aquaponics, which is mixing the plant and fish together?
You know, we at South Centers did a very, very small trial, growing leaf lettuce in an aquaponics system, actually floating on some tanks that we did. So very, very informal and very, very small. But there are different opportunities for aquaponics, and there are operations around the world that do a good deal of aquaponic production. But that's another thing that certainly could be explored.
Now, have they done anything with hydroponics at OSU, or is that?
The horticulture program has done some work with hydroponic tomato and cucumber production specifically, so that resource is available as well.
Does that fall under the title of aquaculture?
Aquaponics, no. That would be in the horticulture program because the fish part is not involved. It's strictly the growing of the plants. But the aquaponics is where you combine the fish and growing of some kind of a plant.
What? You're looking at me.
That was a very good question, Mike. I was very impressed. Because
it's a mutually beneficial.
Aqua is water, so do we tie all this into the same category, or do we separate it?
Mm-hmm. Well, you've got the fish and what they leave when they are done processing their food, and so plants can benefit from the fertilizer.
That's exactly right.
And
Very
then
good.
well, I don't know. We may not live in an area where they may use. So, like after the fish are processed, you've got this stuff, and I think a lot of people use that for fertilizer to spread on fields and stuff.
I think the folks at the aquaculture program at OSU South Centers could answer that question much better than I can. I know they've done a lot of work with biofilters and different things. Of course, you have to keep the water clean for the fish to thrive, and so they could provide all those kinds of expertise to those kinds of questions.
And like water processing, you have to watch out for mercury that's naturally occurring, and
Again, a little too technical for
Okay.
me. I do know that you have to monitor oxygen levels in the water and those kinds of things. But again, those specific production questions, our aquaculture team at South Centers, I mean, that's what they do. So they can really provide answers to
Okay.
those kinds of
And
questions.
do you work there?
I do. I am
So you
based
can-
in Piketon.
We can talk to you as far as the business side there, and talk to the other people as far as the ecological or
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're all housed there at Piketon, and we are all busy as everybody is these days. So it is good to call ahead and make sure that I'm not there today, I'm here today. So if you just walk in the office, I may or may not be in the office that day. So if you want to call me ahead, and I'll go ahead and give that 800 number if you would like that. It's 800-860-7232. And again, you can ask for me, Christie Welch, or you can ask for somebody within the aquaculture program, and they will direct you to the right resource for you.
One other fact that I saw on what you brought. It's my understanding that there is a Farm Animal Welfare Council to where they want to make sure that you are treating, and they consider fish to be animals, that you are treating your fish.
it's
well.
like a PETA type organization, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're required to go sit on the banks of our ponds and talk to our fish at least once a day.
And sing to them. Or
Well, they
whatever.
do like to be sung to as you're feeding them every day, so that's
We
something
can
that you
do
could
that.
do. But just with any other livestock, whether again it's cattle, hogs, sheep, goats, anything that there might be, again, we want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to maintain the quality of that product. And as you know, Jason,
Right.
being a livestock producer, the better you treat your animal, whether it's, again, a goat or a fish, the better they're going to produce for you. So it's really in the producer's best interest to make sure that they're doing the best they can. And of course, I'm sure that you've heard about the Ohio Livestock Care Standards Board that was appointed here over the last couple of years to address some of those issues. And so there are, again, resources available if you have questions concerning those types of things.
Well, that's what makes this operation marketable. I mean, there's so many people out there that they are concerned about where their food comes from. When you go to the local grocery store, you see the cuts of meat laying there. You don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I always wonder or thought it would be interesting to, when you're looking at your meal, where was this all sourced from?
Right.
Was the vegetable from Mexico and this from China or this from here? And
there's a lot of places where the quality of that meat and the standards that go into it are not as good as what they are on my farm. I'll just be honest. I've got some friends that have asked me, where can I go get a side of beef? And I really hesitate to recommend someplace that I seriously do not know what they raise. How do they raise it? What additives do they put in their feeds? What kind of medications do they give? What kind of schedules are they on? What kind of living environments are they in? That's important. I know what goes into my animals, and I know what's on my table, and I think people are becoming more aware of what actually they want on their table.
That's an excellent point, Jason. And, as we mentioned early on, there's so much interest right now in local food production. Yeah. And people really do want to know where their food is coming from and have that connection and be able to look the farmer in the face and say, how are you producing that?
And fish is one of those things that the closer you get it to the production, the better it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
So again, a perfect opportunity to explore maybe some of these niche markets and some marketing opportunities.
Okay, we have 30 seconds.
Christie, I want to thank you again for sharing your time, coming here, talking about various different things. I was hoping we'd get into a little bit of the farmers market, but we'll have to leave that for another time. But thank you very much for coming here. Next week we have Jerry Driggs. Jerry is the manager of the Endeavor Incubator Center over at the Ohio State University South Centers. He's going to talk about business incubators. Again, thank you, Christie.
Thank you, Patrick, Mike, and Jason. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Christy.
Okay.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Jason.
And Mike, thanks for watching.